Okay, yes, Linda.
Yes. Doesn't have to do with camel's milk or the struggle, but it is from this parasha. It's just that before I ever came to Jacob's tent, I was taught that if you use your words to manipulate someone into doing something and then change your actions from what your words said you were going to do, that was considered witchcraft. So my question to you is the way that Jacob handled Esau when he was trying to separate from him, when he said, oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Would you consider that a right thing?
Well, I have actually thought about that. Wasn't there, so I don't know what all exactly was going on through his mind. I have come away thinking, all right, Jacob realizes that, I can't really truly trust this guy. Maybe he had intentions of getting up with him later. There's nothing recorded for us other than when it came time for them to bury their father. So was he being deceptive or was he being shrewd? I don't know. The same question could be, the whole thing that happened with the Vaughn and the grizzled and the speckled and all those kinds of things. Of course, that he had a dream, that kind of laid that out for him. So there's a lot of things that Jacob does that on the surface it may seem deceptive, and maybe that was, but there are some things that he does that just seems to me he's being very shrewd, and being shrewd is not necessarily being deceptive.
The reason I was asking, I've never thought this before, but for some reason this week when I read through that story, I realized that it kind of looked like he was deceptive to Esau. And then you turn around and the next thing that's happening is what happens to his daughter. Mm-hmm. And then what happens with Reuben. And I wondered, the thought just crossed my mind, did he open a spiritual door for bad things to come into his family?
To say that Jacob was a Tom doesn't mean that he was absolutely without flaw, because there's none perfect, no, not one, right? So obviously there are things written down about Jacob like everybody else. These things are written down for our examples, sometimes to learn what to do, sometimes to learn what not to do. So when it comes to Dinah, did he open the door to that? The way it's described, and I won't quote it, but I'll paraphrase it. The way it's described is she decided to go out looking around. And implication being, to see what was out there, to see what all the other girls were wearing, to see what everybody else was doing, and that's how she ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and those awful things happen. Did Jacob open himself, or his family, did he open his family up to that by not following Esau? I don't know. I don't know that I'd go that far just yet, unless, until something else kind of pops up. But see, I'm coming from the place, and I know that people disagree with this, but I'm coming from the place that Jacob is not a supplanter. I'm not of the mind that Jacob deceived Esau out of the birthright. Esau sold that. He knew what he was doing. Jacob went in at his mother's request, yes, to deceive his father, but it went against his nature, because he was saying, I do not want to be viewed as a deceiver. My father might figure this out, and I don't want my father to think I'm deceiving him. And basically his mother said, you just let me worry about that. So should he have done that? We'll be arguing that one all the way to the kingdom too, So my point, though, is I don't believe it's his nature to deceive. I believe that goes against his nature. Did he make mistakes? Sure. Did it open things up to happen to Dinah? Or was it that Dinah just decided to go off on her own to do things that really she shouldn't do?
Well, the other question that came to my mind was, if his behavior was wrong, I don't see anything that he could have done otherwise to separate from Esau, because it seems like Esau was so adamant, and Esau had an army of men to get, to make happen whatever he wanted to happen. So,
Which is why I asked, was he being deceptive or was he being shrewd?
right.
Totally different story. Moses is at the mountain. God tells him, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. You're going to bring my people out of the land of Egypt. You're going to bring them to this mountain. That is Horeb. That is Sinai. Okay. He's not going to want to let you go, but I'm going to use my strong arm and outstretched hand, and he will certainly let you go. Moses goes to Pharaoh, says, God of the Hebrews has sent me to tell you, you need us to let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness to keep a feast unto the Lord. Did Moses lie? Was he being deceptive, or was he being shrewd?
Good point.
I thought so. To be shrewd is not necessarily to be deceptive. Wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Right? God is a good general. He does not give his adversary, he doesn't lay out all his plans for his adversary. He had things recorded in Scripture that once you see it, you see it. And to quote Eddie Chumney, it's everywhere. So, but until those things are revealed, these things are hidden from their eyes. Had the princes of this world known, they would have not crucified the Lord of glory. It was already ordained from the foundation of the world, had been recorded, had been written down, and yet nobody saw it. All right? And so God is a good general. He does not give the opposition all the information of exactly what he's going to do. He does, however, speak to his servants, the prophets. Surely the Lord God does nothing except he first reveal his secret unto his servants, the prophets, because he wants his people to understand what's going on. Okay? But, Moses, was he being deceptive with Pharaoh, or was he being shrewd? Because they did go out into the wilderness, and they did end up keeping a feast unto the Lord. Okay? It's just that he didn't volunteer to tell him, we're going on from there into the land of Canaan, because apparently wasn't needful that he do that. Which then now brings up the point or the question of, after Pharaoh releases them, why then does he pursue them? Because something happened that let him know they weren't just going to keep the 3 days journey and then come back. Because remember, he'd been trying to keep their livestock, he'd been trying to keep the wives and children at home and all this, because he wasn't real sure he could trust this guy. And that's why all those plagues had to happen. But then something happened. He knew what they were doing. He understood what they were doing. But that's the trap that God set for his adversary, because he's a good general. So is he being deceptive, or is he being shrewd?